Hi, my name is Denise Devenish, and thank you for joining me today. I have a background in the music industry. I grew up in the industry. All my family work in the music industry, and I have sang professionally and toured, and later trained in psychotherapy and qualified as a counsellor, and decided to set up private practice, offering a specialist service for people who work in the music and creative industries, because I recognise a great need for specialist services. It's a real honour to be here today. This is a topic that's very close to my heart, and I'm looking forward to sharing the information I have with you. We have 40 minutes, and at the end there'll be some time for questions. So let me share my screen. Right, so, sorry. So today, my presentation is separated into 4 sections. We're going to look at risk factors associated with mental health problems, specifically in the music industry. We're going to identify the signs and symptoms of a potential mental health problem. Look at strategies that can aid in prevention of mental health problems. And this is all in quite a general sense, because we have 40 minutes, and learn about the different types of support that's out there and available, specifically in the music industry and generally. So, risk factors in the industry. So let's start with Help Musicians UK. For those of you who don't know, Help Musicians UK are an incredible charity that do a lot to support those working in the music industry. And I've been working with them as a spokesperson and supporting lots of clients that have come through, because they're providing financial support to put into counselling at the moment for musicians. So that's been wonderful. And they were the first people in the UK to set up research looking specifically into mental health in the music industry, trying to understand if there was an issue first and foremost, which there is. And out of nearly 3,000 people, 71.1% said that they had had anxiety and panic attacks, and 68.5% said that they had experienced incidences of depression. So exploring why this is, these are the main issues that came up. So I was very lucky to take part in the research and support people in the space. Lots of stuff came up. They were talking about personal experiences of working in the music industry. And of course, I'd like to start by saying it's full of wonderful people, and it's a beautiful place to work. And that's why people choose to spend their lives working in the music industry. However, financial issues, pressure to please, confidence, self-belief, substance misuse, competition, the 24/7 nature of it, having personal and artistic dilemma. These are the kinds of issues that really came up, and I'll elaborate some more. Financial issues, of course, now is uniquely difficult for people across the music industry. But always has been in different ways. You know, often musicians are working several jobs to do their music, worrying about the next job, being unsure about the certainty of the job that they are in. So that was the main issue that people were speaking about, and feeling a sense of low self-worth, because if they weren't creating music, then they weren't happy. And if they weren't being paid enough for what they were doing, then they didn't feel confident in themselves, or perhaps they weren't able to provide for family in the way they wanted, or they felt judged by family and people around them, people perceiving what they did as not being real work. And so confidence and self-worth issues came up a lot during the research, and comes up often in the work that I do with musicians. And we're gonna explore a bit about why this is later. Pressure to please, pressure in general, wanting to please the label or management if they're in a deal, wanting to please family and friends, to prove themselves, seems to be something that comes up a lot. And feeling competitive and not wanting to feel competitive. So a fear of peers perhaps taking work that might be available to them, comparing, seeing themselves as not as good as, or that they should be practicing harder or better. And yeah, not wanting to feel this way, but feeling a sense of competition a lot of the time. Substance misuse issues are very common in the industry, and it's something that has been glamorized and spoken about for a long time, and it really is a thing. There isn't hard evidence, for a lot of this stuff. It's still a new topic, speaking about mental health issues in the music industry, and it's great that artists are coming out and discussing it so that it makes it more normal for everybody else to talk about it. But all of this stuff is still quite new. And I'm in touch with 2 PhD students who are looking specifically into why those in the music industry seem to struggle with substance misuse issues. But we will elaborate on this a little bit further in today's presentation. But again, that was something that came up a lot in the research, people struggling with different substances to help manage their stress, feelings of insecurity, that kind of thing. The 24/7 burnout, often people spoke about feeling like they were constantly working, and if they weren't working as in performing or creating or at their job, thinking about the work and thinking about having to be available. And so the very nature of the industry being 24/7, I think, is overlooked often too, and being expected to work ridiculous hours. And if you are on tour, everything kind of time, feeling like it's very difficult to manage and in an unusual realm, often for people that work in the industry. An artistic dilemma for lots of musicians and artists, continuously struggling with this sense of trying to be creative and feeling like they're not being creative enough, or honoring what they want to do, or trying to please, and getting caught up in between these two parts. So I hope that gives a good overall general sense of the kind of issues that came up during the Help Musicians UK research, and also the kinds of issues that are reflected in the work that I do with musicians as a counsellor. Help Musicians UK went on to put a paper together out of the research, and you can download this for free on their website, and really worth checking out. It's a really interesting read. It's called Can Music Make You Sick? And I pulled a couple of quotes from this research that stood out to me. This is the first. I'm not sure I'd say it's the music that makes me sick. It's the lack of things I'd consider success. It's the lack of support, doing something that's not considered real work. So I touched on that before. But yeah, just feeling a lack of support and acknowledgement, just for how difficult it can be to work in the industry, despite how fun it can be and amazing too. The lack of acknowledgement and support for the parts that are really hard. And there are plenty. Yeah, I like this one too. A plumber doesn't work for experience. A doctor doesn't perform surgery for exposure. It's quite incredible the amount of work that musicians and people that are working their way up to get higher in the industry are supposed to do for free. And for experience, you wouldn't see doctors doing things for experience or exposure, or many other people in many other fields of work. And I think that's really unfair and a challenging, given that you're supposed to do that. If you're keen and if you're really up for it and you really want it, then you say yes to everything and do everything, even if it's paying you nothing and exhausting you. Dispelling myths. So people outside the industry can get the impression that performers are outgoing, positive, creative, and confident, but performers are often highly self-critical and not as confident as they come across on stage or screen. This is very true. And this leads into my next point. Another very common mental health issue, although perfectionism is a part of many other issues, for example, OCD or eating disorders. But often performers struggle with perfectionism. And from a humanistic point of view, which is the modality I've trained in, this is very much to do with our sense of self-worth. And again, I'll elaborate on this later, but when people are really obsessed with perfectionism, it's very hard for them to be in this moment at all, constantly thinking about a performance and making sure that it's perfect so that they can stay accepted and loved. And this kind of thinking can lead to all sorts of mental health issues, and is very common in the world of performers from what I've seen. And in the research, there's quite a lot of research actually to determine this as true around perfectionists and performers. So again, we're going to just keep an eye on the time. Could speak about this stuff for hours. A mental health issue in a general sense, but I like this quote from the NHS. Mental health is about how we think, feel, and behave. 1 in 4 people in the UK has a mental health problem at some point. I think it's 1 in 3 now, which can affect their daily life, relationships, or physical health. I shall update that. Signs and symptoms. So, I mean, you can see on the screen, you know, feeling sad or down. At points we all might feel sad or down. In fact, it's probably an important part of being human, so we can detect what we need accordingly. But when we are feeling sad or down, anxious or stressed, confused, struggling with excessive fears or worries, feelings of guilt, when our moods are changing, all of this on a recurring basis, that's when to seek help. If something is happening now and then, isolated experiences, it's manageable. I would say the only exception here is detachment from reality. So if you're having delusions, imagining things are happening that aren't, paranoid, assuming that people are talking about you, that things are going on where there's no evidence to say they actually are happening, then that's a bit more acute and needs to be addressed quicker, or hallucinating, imagining things are happening that aren't there, or seeing things happening that aren't there. But more generally, and withdrawing from friends, if you are a social person and then you stop being social, for example, significant tiredness can be a result of having mental health problems, from being exhausted, of having anxiety and negative thinking. It can really take a toll physically. So high levels of stress and anxiety on a recurring basis, I'd like to say a little bit more about. This is an image of the stress bucket. And quite simply, you know, our stress levels will go up, and then we can turn the tap on ideally and empty out some of that stress. If we are unable to do that and it's building, then we have a problem, and anxiety levels, excuse me, can build. And if we're having recurring anxiety, it's very difficult to concentrate, and so the body will generate cortisol. You know, your peripheral vision might widen because it's designed to help you detect danger. Your heartbeat can go. It can be really, really scary having a panic attack, and it's a big spectrum, anxiety. So you can have generalized anxiety disorder where you don't have panic attacks, but you're feeling anxious all of the time. So again, if you are having any recurring negative feelings, then it's really important to seek help at that point. Many people say, "Oh, I'm not sure if I'm suitable, if I deserve to go and use NHS resources, or if I need help. You know, there's people that are worse off than me." And this is really dangerous thinking. We all have mental health, as we do have physical health, and we will all have mental health problems. We will struggle with our mental health as we will our physical health. It's very normal. And there's a lot of room for the judgment and the stigma around it to break much further. And so my call is to everybody, when there is even the remote sense that there is a problem, to seek help, because when we leave problems unresolved, they become worse, and mental health problems can become a lot worse if not dealt with early on. So prevention is key, and early intervention. So solutions and strategies. I'm aware that I'm having to move through this quite quickly because I've got a lot here. So if it's a given and it's a good place to start, ideally, people working in the industry acknowledge that it's not an easy place to work. I think that's a really good place to start. It's quite extraordinary. People in my own family, friends, and in all my work, I often have to begin by establishing, with the client, or I've had conversations personally, that it is hard. And it's okay to say that it's hard, and it's okay to say that you are struggling. That's where you have to start. Yes, it's glamorous. Yes, it's fun. Yes, if you love music, then okay, it's your dream job, perhaps. But there are many parts that aren't the dream. There are many parts that are very challenging. And the industry is a very unique place, full of unique, wonderful people, but there's a lot of challenges. So it's a good place to start there. And once we start there, we can accept that there are these extremes, sometimes these highs and these lows. And for us to be able to stay well, we have to have self-worth, unwavering self-worth. So I would normally ask for people to contribute, but we don't have time here. So I'm going to give you some ideas around self-care, which equates to having good self-worth, I think, on many levels. When we're caring for ourselves, then we see ourselves as worthy to do so. Checking in. I say this a lot, and by this I mean, befriending yourself, having a dialogue with oneself, asking yourself how you are, how you feel, what you need, observing what you're feeling in your body, observing what you are thinking. And then fundamentally, these are basics, but crucial. Eating well, a balanced diet, getting good sleep, and exercising, having a structure, especially now, creating boundaries, saying no. People take on, like I said, a lot of work, want to, especially now, again, wanting to grab any opportunity they can. But if we are not well, we can't work. It's that simple. And so if our work is creating, then we have to consider the emotional labor that's involved in that too. Boundaries are essential in every area across the music industry, because it's so much people work. So investing in you personally, separating yourself from your work so that you are nurturing yourself, you're taking care of yourself, you are doing nice things for you is very important, and allowing yourself the time to do so. Playing for enjoyment for musicians and artists, for people working across the industry, if you play just to have fun rather than it being about work. And meditation and mindfulness practice, I do endorse this. There are many different types, but I think having a space to meditate and practice being aware of what's going on for you, even if it's just for a few minutes a day, is really useful to bring you to the present moment rather than worrying about the future and what could happen and what might happen. COVID self-care specifically, again, we can manage our diet whilst we're locked down. We can try and sleep well, have a sleep routine and exercise. Staying in contact with people is really key. It's quite easy when you're in your bubble or alone and shut off from the world just to slowly shut away from people. But it's really important to converse with people and share in each other's experiences and open up about how you're feeling with people that you trust. Creating support networks online, I think right now is really useful. Spaces to talk about the loss of work and the grief, for those in the industry, at the prospect of having to retrain and not knowing when they're going to be able to return back to a live sector. When can we sing again in front of people? When can we be with people and share music and jam and play and it be legal and okay? So support networks are really useful at the moment, just as spaces for people to open up about what's going on, how they're feeling. It normalizes it. It reassures people that it's okay to be scared, to be sad, and to be grieving the industry as it was. It's really important. Boundaries. I could just do a whole talk on boundaries. Boundaries is very important in protecting yourself and managing what you can and knowing what you can't manage. People, depending on their history as well and what they've gone through, may struggle to say no and to create boundaries and to create routine and structure for themselves. But it's very, very important for one's mental health and well-being, self-care, safety, to do so. And I'll speak a little bit more about boundaries as we go on. Creating routine and daily structure. So again, with the boundaries, having order and trusting yourself to stick to some order so that you know how the day is going to be set out and you don't get lost in a kind of fogginess or where things become merged. They can become messy. And so I think routine and boundaries are really useful right now during this bizarre time. Self-care when creating. So I mentioned this before. I think it's really important to consider framing times to create. I think often we just find ourselves in a flow and that's fine. So maybe focusing on an ending so that there's a separation between creating and normal life, because when we're tapping into those parts, we're emotionally bringing up things. And I don't think that there's nearly enough consideration for how much that takes of an artist or a musician. You know, we all enjoy listening to songs and connecting to somebody else's pain, somebody else's capacity to be honest in their expression. And as artists, we really need to take care of ourselves in doing that. And even if other people aren't going to feel it or connect to it, we honor that in ourselves, and that it takes a lot to do that. I think often substance misuse can be linked very much to this as well. The amount of emotion and feeling and making a career out of your experiences and your personal feelings and stories and views. You know, it's so much feeling involved. And it can be said that addiction is a feeling disease. So creating a culture, I think, you know, as I said, I'm really happy to be here today and to be speaking about mental health in the music industry. And I encourage, and as a spokesperson, you know, people everywhere across the industry, managers, roadies, light techs, musicians, you know, artists, writers, everybody to open up and speak about the struggle and not feel like you are therefore not being grateful or thankful for working in the industry, rather strengthening it and normalizing speaking about the struggle is really important. So we're all playing a part in that. And I think it's really key that we continue to speak openly about mental health in the music industry, create forums, management, labels. You know, I think lots of people have responsibility to ensure that these conversations are happening. So prevention is key, and I touched on that before. So I'll move on from here because time is moving very fast. Learn about the different types of help available. So this is really important, and I want to spend a bit of time on this. I think that people, as I said before, will recognize there's an issue and, okay, I need to go and get some help, and then don't know really where to begin. So you might do an online search and feel quite disheartened or, you know, overwhelmed and confused, and you're at a point where you're already feeling all those things and vulnerable too. So I think it's really useful to make a distinction between the three main modalities, the three main types of counselling and therapy that's available out there. So these would be solution focused. So cognitive behavioral therapy is in the solution focused realm. There are many others within each of these realms, but generally speaking, to explain generally, this type of therapy is more about working with our thought patterns and changing the thought patterns to get a better result. So looking at our underlying beliefs, sometimes working with maps, trying to understand the core of where our beliefs come, and then changing the thinking so that we view ourselves and that belief in the world differently. CBT is probably the most common form of psychotherapy available in NHS because it's the easiest to measure. It's very useful for anxiety and depression-related mental health issues. And again, it's for the individual to be aware and willing to maybe trial different therapists, because the relationship is really key also between you and a therapist. Not every therapist, regardless of their qualifications, is going to be right for somebody, but the modality is really important, the approach, and being aware of the different approaches so that we're aware of the kind of experience we're going to have in therapy. Then there is psychodynamic, which is kind of more Freud. It's the Freudian realm. It's about our early childhood attachments, and the focus really is in understanding the roots being there, how we have developed our attachment to our parents, to our family, and our early childhood experiences, and looking at understand that so that we can change our focus, shed some light, and live in a different way because we've unlocked maybe the unconscious parts that were set in early childhood. The humanistic realm, which is where I am. I'm a person-centered counsellor because I feel that this approach works best for me as a therapist. And I find it very effective. And again, all these approaches are effective depending on the individual's experience and what they need. But from the humanistic perspective, it's very much about working more in the present and what the client is bringing in the moment, rather than analysing or insisting the client goes anywhere, very much staying with the client and helping the client to understand their world better and what they need, by offering reflections and creating a space through empathy and non-judgment to be in the world with the client so much so that you can together move forward. It's about a safe space. It's about a non-judgmental space, and a space where the client can unravel at their own pace what's happening and come to their own conclusions. Cultural competence is very important. It's very important that therapists have cultural competence. In the world of psychotherapy, there isn't enough diversity. And so this really limits, people going for help, reaching out for help, worrying that perhaps they won't be able to relate to their counsellor or therapist, is going to massively hinder the process. And if somebody is in the space with a therapist and feeling judged, or that the therapist can't understand them, then ideally we can have these conversations. The client may be vulnerable, but the therapist has to be able to hold that space. And so the therapist needs to have studied their own biases and their own judgments to be able to sit with whatever comes up, to be challenged, and to work through any challenges that might come up in the space around diversity issues. So I was going to offer a meditation, and I think I'd like to do that at the end, because I really, this meditation is very simple and very useful for checking in, which is what I was talking about earlier on. I think it'd be a nice way to end, but we've only got about 9 minutes. So I'm just going to go through the other sections first, and then perhaps we can end on a meditation if we have time. So support resources for the industry specifically. Help Musicians UK are absolutely incredible, as are the British Association of Performing Arts Medicine and Music Support. Real pillars, they are offering so much support, especially right now. Help Musicians UK has a 24-hour helpline, as do Music Support. So you can call in at any time and speak with a therapist. This isn't a substitute for regular therapy. This is in place to have brief conversations, to check in, and to maybe be signposted on for further support. But they also offer lots of financial support. They just opened up their third round of funding, the COVID fund. And as I said before, they're paying for some musicians to have courses of therapy. And BAPAM, they offer free clinical assessments. So they work a lot with musicians with physical ailments too. So if there's physical injury, you can see physios, and there's a huge directory of therapists available to you if you go through the BAPAM route. And they've done something extraordinary. They teamed up with Help Musicians UK and PPL and are offering a bursary specifically for Black, Asian, ethnic minority musicians to train as counsellors and psychotherapists, because they recognise the need for more diversity in the world of psychotherapy. So we've put this, this bursary together. So look into that if that applies to you and you're interested. Excuse me. So myself and other industry counsellors, I'm working with clients throughout the week. And I'm going to put my details at the end here. There are a group of us who specifically work with musicians and creatives and have a background in the music industry. And it seems to be really effective in supporting musicians and industry folk, them knowing that we have our own personal understanding of such a unique world. General support services, the Samaritans, fantastic. Mind offer low-cost counselling and are brilliant. I did some training with Mind. They're great. And it's also really important to mention at this point that training institutions, so schools where people are training as counsellors and psychotherapists often offer free or very low cost counselling sessions for their students who are finishing, who are highly supervised. They'll be, supervised by 2 or 3 people at one time. So, clinically it's very held, and at that point they'll be trained enough where they've made probably 100 to 150 hours. So it's a really good way to get lower cost counselling. Baton specifically works with Black, African and Asian therapists for people from diverse backgrounds who feel that they want to work with a therapist exclusively who's from their own cultural background. PAPRIS is for people under 35. Anxiety UK are fantastic, as are Calm, and they specifically work with men, because men are statistically the most likely to commit suicide. And so they really shed a light on this and created their service to work specifically with men. So I mentioned about the bursary. So this is my my contact details. I have an Instagram page. I'm not particularly active on it, but I thought it'd be useful to kind of extend my a sense of me, which is useful for people when they go to my website. So please stay in contact. And I'd like to just do a quick meditation. We have about 4 or 5 minutes. Just to finish off, and essentially we're just going to scan from our head to our toes. It's called Vipassana. It's a very old Buddhist type of meditation, and I do it every day and find it very, very useful just for checking in and getting a sense of what's going on. So if you don't want to take part, then we'll only be about 4 or 5 minutes at most, and then we can have some time for questions if there are any. We're just going to take a deep breath in with our feet on the floor. In through our nose and out through our mouth. And again. And out through the mouth. And we're just going to bring our awareness to the space at the top of our heads. And we're going to slowly start scanning down our foreheads, our eyebrows, our eyes, eyelids, space under the eyes, top of our nose, cheeks, cheekbones, ears, nostrils and the space above our top lip, slowly scanning down, our bottom lip and chin area, jawline, scanning down our throat area, collarbones and shoulders, chest area, arms, stomach, all down our back, our hip area and groin area and our thighs. Slowly scanning down to our knees, calves and shins, our ankles and our feet. And we're going to imagine at the bottom of our feet roots as if we are a tree, and those roots are being drawn deep into the earth, grounding us. And we're just going to take 3 breaths in through our nose and out through our mouth. In through our nose and out through our mouth. One more breath, in through the nose and out through the mouth. Just being aware of our breath, naturally as it is, and when you feel ready to open your eyes. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here, and I hope it's been useful. And take good care of yourselves and do stay in touch. Thank you.